Thank you, presenters. So we'll move on to the third issue for the Department of Social Services. It's the Children and Family Services Programs.
Fancy on us, Pete. Huh?
I'm a pilot.
We're ready when you are, sir.
All right. Mr. Chair, members, Pete Chervinka, Program Deputy Director at the State Department of Social Services. Thanks for the opportunity to be before you today on the children's topics. Your agenda does a good job laying out what's in the May revision here. In the current year, we have $5 million general fund. That funding was released to counties for the development of protocols to define how counties would address commercially sexually exploited children that came into contact with the child welfare system. In the agreement last year, the budget and the January proposal for the coming year included $14 million general fund. At the time, we noted that the recent enactment at the time in November of 2014, the federal government enacted additional legislation on the topic. The May revision adjusts the budget to reflect the additional statewide mandates in that federal requirement and better delineate the various activities for which funding is proposed. Your agenda lays out the detail there, and happy to answer any questions on that one. There still is $14 million general fund in the budget proposal to address the commercially sexually exploited children issue. There's additionally some county share folded in for the federal obligations and adjustments to the federal funding. We realize there have been some concerns raised with those adjustments, and we're continuing to talk with the counties on those issues. The second item, there's additional funding, again, following work with counties, changing federal requirements for the standards for case review, by which we monitor cases for federal eligibility and the services provided to clients. We've simply re-estimated the amount of effort that's going to take and increased the funding in the governor's budget from I believe around 85 social workers to 150 or 88 to 155 social workers for that activity. That's an essential piece of our federal compliance with case review mandates. On the next item, for years, the university systems that host our regional training academies and the California social work education group have been foregoing their indirect costs to administer the program here. They've indicated and given us some fair warning that they were unable to continue to do that. So we've increased, we've for the first time provided funding for those universities to pay them a 10% indirect cost rate in the budget year. We think it's vital that as we're doing lots of things in the child welfare arena, including moving toward the continuum of care reform, that cutting the number of courses or the offerings in our training to social workers is not the right approach. So we funded that indirect cost rate rather than reduce the services. On item number 4, there are some federal requirements in the publication of I'm sorry, let me start that sentence over. There have been some federal changes in the requirements on the reporting of psychotropic medication use among the child welfare population. And so to comply with that reporting obligation, the budget includes $100,000 general fund at the May revision to augment a contract we have with the University of California, Berkeley, who does a lot of data matching work for us on behalf of children. And that would be, again, a federal compliance issue for us with that contracted money. That's on top of money that was already included in the general in the governor's budget for the issue more generally. And then the last item in your agenda on the children's issues is a trailer bill to extend the intensive treatment foster care rate. This is a specialized type of foster care service that is provided to certain children in California. The statutory sunset date for that particular rate is June 30, 2015, and we think it's completely appropriate, pending implementation of the continuum of care reform, that rate continue to exist for another 18 months. So the trailer bill language proposes to sunset that on January 1, 2017. To comply with the date currently in the proposed legislation on the continuum of care reform.
Thank you. Anything from Finance? Anything from the LAO's office?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ginny Bello with the Legislative Analyst's Office. On the issue of the commercially sexually exploited children and the Strengthening Families Act, as Mr. Cervenka indicated, we've also heard from the counties some concerns about using that original $14 million, using a piece of it to fund the new federal requirements. And although both are broadly related to this issue of commercial sexual exploitation, we're trying to get a better idea of how much of what the legislature originally intended to do with that $14 million overlaps with these new rules, and appreciate the staff recommendation here to hold this open while we work through some of those issues.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Mr. Chu.
Just want to make a quick comment. I was really gratified to see the mention around how our state does a better job of collecting performance data regarding psychotropic medication that's prescribed to foster care youth. As we all know, this is a topic whose importance has really exploded in recent years, and the statistics are damning. And as someone who is helping to jockey at least one of the legislative proposals from the package coming over from the Senate on this topic, I think we've all been surprised at how difficult it has been to collect the appropriate data to really solve this problem. So I just want to thank you for the work you're doing in that area, and look forward to hearing future updates on what data you collect.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank Mecca with CWDA, speaking to the first issue, the commercially sexually exploited children. Your agenda lays out our objection to the governor's proposal. We view it as a diversion of $3.2 million that the legislature intended to provide for services for CSEC victims to pay for a new federal law that was not contemplated at the time, and that involves activities that were not contemplated as what the $14 million would fund. So we actually believe it's a diversion of resources away from its original intent. I know the issue is going to remain open, and we look forward to talking to all of you as well. The federal requirements related to developing policies and procedures goes beyond what you contemplated last year to just develop protocols. The federal law sort of opens up the target population to at-risk youth. We were not talking about at-risk youth last year. It requires us to take efforts to locate absent foster youth and then screen them all for CSEC. Certainly not something that was contemplated. And there are new data reporting requirements in the federal law that were not contemplated. So we actually view it as a diversion, and we think it would be more appropriate for the state to put in additional resources to fund the new federal mandates, just as the counties have to put in their share, because under the Constitution, under new federal mandates, the counties have to pay a share as well. We'd note that in the January budget, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cervenka, but there were funds added in the January budget above the $14 million. And then the May revise takes those funds away and says, no, use the money that you put in last year. That's our interpretation of the budget. Anyway, the issue's staying open, and we absolutely think that the diversion of the $14 million goes beyond the legislature's intent. And I point out that we were the sponsors of that proposal and look forward to working that out. It's too vulnerable a population to sort of cannibalize what little funding that we provided in the state budget. As the federal government expands mandates, we should expand our effort as well.
Thank you. Mr. Cervenka, we want to give you an opportunity to speak to that. As many people know, I've worked with a number of youth in foster care, probation, and youth who've been sexually exploited. It is a very vulnerable population, very hard to reach, very hard to serve. We don't want to do anything that diverts resources away from that population. Help us understand kind of the approach here that you've laid out in working with them.
Well, we certainly agree that it's a highly vulnerable population and important to continue the services to them. As Mr. Mecca explained, there are lots of moving parts and pieces and how they're interrelated here. We'll continue to work with your staff and counties as well to sort this out. I think it's... I think it's an area that we can talk about. I'm not sure that we viewed that as a diversion of funds as much as addressing available funds to the mandates at hand for the program. I think that's just a different perspective on it, and that's not to say that their view isn't correct on the subject either. So I think we need to have that conversation.
Thank you. It is a subject of deep interest for the committee, and so expect that there'll be more conversation. We appreciate your openness to the further discussion. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
The next item for the Department of Social Services, CalFresh and other food assistance.
Morning again, Todd Bland with the department. Two issues for you on the Drought Food Assistance Program. This is our program of contracting with California Emergency Food Link to provide food boxes to drought-impacted communities throughout the 24 counties identified by the Governor's Drought Task Force as having both high unemployment and high agriculture employment. In Chapter 1 statutes of 2015, the legislature approved an additional $17 million to that program and also added 5 counties to the program. What I can tell you as of last week, I know of those 5 counties, which were Riverside, Ventura, Imperial, Santa Barbara. I am drawing a blank on that last one. I know that Riverside all of them have put forward drought action plans for how they're going to distribute the food to the farm worker communities, and we delivered to Riverside County this week. The others are in the process of scheduling. The finance letter and the way the budget adjusts simply just aligns our 2 budget years appropriately with the action the legislature's already taken. I would view it as a technical adjustment. I can move on to issue 2 if there are no questions. Simplified reporting is the elimination of simplified reporting was a January proposal to essentially, we believe it's win-win. It's easier to administer for our counties. It's easier for clients, and we believe for most it lowers the requirement to make mid-period reports. We are doing this. It was a budget proposal. It did not need a law change. We did have a work group work with counties and advocates, and there have been discussions. And in part of that, the feeling was rather than phase it in starting in October, which was our plan, counties would prefer, and our consortia automation systems would prefer to do it all in January. With the automation more or less in place at that time. So our budget simply moves the implementation date. That's it on food programs.
Anything from finance? Anything from the LAO's office? Questions from the committee? Public comment?
Chair and members, Kathy Mossberg representing the California Association of Food Banks. Want to just continue to go on record in thanking the administration and particularly the Department of Social Services. We're working with our member food banks in rolling out this drought assistance program. It's been incredibly effective and important. Do want to just add on to that. We do have a broader proposal into both subcommittees on both sides. We do see hunger broader than just the identified counties, some of them certainly linking to drought, but we continue to see hunger in our food banks and continue to have lines. We think that emergency food should be funded in a broader way in addition to this, and would be a good coupling. Thank you.
Noe Paramo, California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, in support of the proposal to expand the drought assistance program to 2 years and the additional funding. And I'll also echo the comments to provide an expansion of the funding, because there might be farm worker communities, other communities who may be left out. So you want to have a better safety net. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin Esling, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organizations, in support of the simplification process for the CalFresh reporting, and we appreciate the department inviting us and participating in a work group to make sure that that benefits both the recipients and also the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our discussion on the CalFresh programs. Moving on within the Department of Social Services, thank you very much, presenters. We have the adult programs.
Mr. Chair, members, Pete Chervenka again. Your agenda does this justice as well. For the SSI SSP program, the May revision reflects a slightly lower growth than was projected at the governor's budget. For current year savings of about $15.5 million and savings of about $21.4 million in budget year. That's still growing caseload, but growing slightly slower than projected at governor's budget. There's no other adjustments in the May revision for that program. For the IHSS program, similarly, your agenda provides the numbers on net changes here. Lots of moving parts and pieces in the caseload estimates, as well as the overtime dollars assumptions due to the vacation of the federal regulations by the federal courts. California is not paying overtime in the program. That funding was budgeted in the current year. However, the bulk of that current year money was instead expended on the caseload in the program as reflected at May revision. Happy to answer questions on the IHSS program as well. Those are the two items before the committee today.
Anything from Finance? Anything from the LAO's office?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jenny Bello with the Analyst's Office. We have requested some backup information on the estimates related to the in-home supportive services program, and we are continuing to receive that from the department. They've been providing us with a lot of technical assistance on this, and we will keep monitoring it and alert staff if we notice any changes or differences from the May revision estimate.
Committee questions? Any public comment? Thank you. Seeing none, we will move on to our next item. The California Department of Aging, Department of Healthcare Services. We have the Multipurpose Senior Services Program Transition Timeline.
Hi, Mary Cantwell, Department of Healthcare Services. As we've discussed previously in this committee, there have been concerns raised about the readiness of the full integration of MSSP into managed care for the Coordinated Care Initiative counties. And at the request of the providers as well as this committee, the department has proposed trailer bill language that would extend the full integration to the end of 2017, but allow for an earlier integration if both the providers and plans agree and have demonstrated readiness to both our department and the Department of Aging.
Anything from Finance? LAO's office? Questions from the committee? Public comment?
Hello, good morning, members. My name is Denise Leiker. I'm a site director from Los Angeles County and also representing the MSSP Site Association. Thank you for your time today, and we want to express our appreciation for the department working on acknowledging that the current timeframes were not enough to provide for a safe transition for this very frail and fragile population. We have seen the latest draft of the trailer bill language as of last night, and the association is in support. And we again thank you for your help on all of this.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Monica Miller on behalf of the Jewish Family Services of Los Angeles, and we would concur with the MSA Association. We do appreciate that the department did recognize that there was a problem and is addressing it now. We will continue to work and hope that the legislature continues to maintain a very strong oversight on this program to ensure that when these elders do go into the CCI counties that they are taken care of appropriately. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Eileen Coons, and I am site director with MSSP in Pasadena at Huntington Hospital, and I'm MSA president currently. And I just thank you for hearing this issue and would ask for your support of what we've seen of the draft trailer bill language. We are very hopeful of being able to, with your support, better transition this program, make sure that these frail elders are more safely transitioned to managed care. So we ask for your support of that objective, and so far we're hopeful that the language will go through that will achieve that objective. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our final item for today's hearing, and I want to thank all of our presenters, the public speakers, all staff, and the members of the committee for the robust discussion. Stay tuned. We will continue our discussion this week, and we'll see you then. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.